Imagine Europe thousands of years ago. Vast forests stretched across the land. Roaming these forests were the Aurochs, the wild ancestors of modern cattle. Larger and more powerful than their domesticated descendants, Aurochs were formidable creatures. Bulls were a deep black with a white stripe down their backs. Cows were generally reddish-brown. Both sexes possessed massive horns that could reach up to 2 feet in length. Aurochs were not just physically imposing, they held immense cultural significance. Cave paintings from Lascaux and Altamira depict them with reverence. These paintings suggest that humans hunted aurochs, but also revered their strength and power. The aurochs even feature in ancient mythology. As humans cleared forests for agriculture, aurochs populations dwindled. The last known aurochs, a female, died in a Polish forest in 1627. With her death, an animal that had roamed Europe for hundreds of thousands of years vanished. Their extinction left a void in the European landscape, both ecological and cultural. The early 20th century was a time of great scientific advancement. New discoveries in genetics and evolution were capturing imaginations. It was during this period that two brothers, Heinz and Lutz Heck, became fascinated by the idea of resurrecting extinct animals. The brothers, both zoologists, believed that extinct species could be brought back through selective breeding. Their chosen subject, the aurochs. The Hecks believed that the genetic blueprint of the aurochs still existed, scattered and fragmented within existing cattle breeds. By carefully selecting and breeding individuals with aurochs-like traits, they believed they could essentially reverse engineer the extinct animal. Their efforts were not purely scientific. The Hecks were also driven by a nationalistic sentiment. They envisioned the resurrected aurochs as a symbol of German strength and vitality. This ambition would unfortunately become intertwined with the Nazi regime, lending a dark undercurrent to their work. The Hecks breeding program began in the 1920s, utilizing zoos and breeding centers across Germany. They selected various breeds of cattle for their experiment, each chosen for specific aurochs-like traits. Spanish fighting bulls were chosen for their aggression and large horns. Hungarian grey cattle were favored for their hardiness and primitive appearance. Other breeds, such as Scottish Highland cattle and Corsican cattle, were also incorporated into the mix. The breeding process was meticulous and complex. The Hecks carefully selected individuals with desired traits such as horn shape, coat color, and skeletal structure. They then bred these individuals, selecting the offspring that most closely resembled their vision of the aurochs. This process, known as backbreeding, was painstaking and time-consuming. Within a few generations, the Hecks produced animals that bore a striking resemblance to ancient depictions of aurochs. These animals, dubbed Heck cattle, were large and muscular with long curved horns. Their coats displayed the characteristic black and reddish-brown hues of their extinct ancestors. The Hecks declared their experiment a success, claiming to have resurrected the aurochs. The Hecks' claim of resurrecting the aurochs was met with considerable skepticism within the scientific community. Critics argued that the Hecks breeding program, while impressive, could not possibly replicate the genetic complexity of the extinct aurochs. Selective breeding, they argued, could only select for traits present in existing populations. It could not recreate lost genetic diversity. Furthermore, the Hecks' reliance on subjective criteria, such as physical appearance, was deemed scientifically unreliable. Without access to the aurochs' DNA, critics argued, it was impossible to know how closely the Heck cattle truly resembled their extinct ancestors. The Hecks project, while ambitious, raised more questions than it answered. Ethical concerns also arose. Some questioned the Hecks' motives for resurrecting a large, potentially dangerous animal. Others worried about the welfare of the Heck cattle themselves, which were often bred for extreme traits. The Hecks project, it became clear, was not just a scientific endeavor, it was a philosophical and ethical minefield. The quest to bring back the aurochs didn't end with the Heck brothers. Advances in genetics, particularly the ability to sequence ancient DNA, have breathed new life into the dream of aurochs resurrection. Scientists are now able to extract DNA from aurochs' bones and teeth, providing a glimpse into the genetic makeup of this extinct giant. By comparing the Aurochs genome to that of modern cattle, researchers can identify the genetic changes that occurred during domestication. This information can then be used to guide breeding programs, selecting for individuals that possess more Aurochs-like genes. This approach, known as Breeding Back 2.0, aims to create animals that are genetically closer to the Aurochs than the heck cattle. Several initiatives are currently underway to breed Aurochs-like cattle using this genomic information. The Tauros Project in Europe, for example, is using a combination of backbreeding and genetic selection to create cattle that are both physically and genetically similar to Aurochs. These projects are still in their early stages, but they hold the promise of bringing us closer than ever before to recreating the Aurochs. Section 6. Beyond backbreeding, genetic engineering and ethics. The ability to read and manipulate DNA has opened up even more radical possibilities for resurrecting extinct species. Genetic engineering techniques such as CRISPR-Cas9 allow scientists to make precise changes to an organism's genome. Theoretically, this technology could be used to edit the genome of a modern cow, inserting Aurochs genes to recreate the extinct species. While this technology is still in its early stages, the prospect of de-extinction raises profound ethical questions. Is it ethical to bring back an extinct species, especially one as large and potentially disruptive as the Aurochs? What would be the ecological impact of reintroducing such a species, and who would be responsible for the welfare of these resurrected animals? Proponents argue that it could help us right past wrongs, restoring ecosystems that have been damaged by human activity. Opponents worry about unintended consequences, arguing that we should focus on conserving existing species, rather than trying to bring back those that are already gone. The question of whether or not to resurrect the Aurochs is not simply a scientific one, it is a societal one. Section 7. The imperfect mirror, ecological considerations. Even if we could perfectly recreate the Aurochs genetically and physically, there's another crucial aspect to consider: its ecological role. Ecosystems are complex webs of interactions. Aurochs, as large herbivores, played a specific role in shaping the European landscape for millennia. Can we truly resurrect an animal without also resurrecting its ecological niche? The forests and grasslands that the Aurochs once roamed have been transformed by centuries of human activity. Introducing them into modern landscapes could have unforeseen and potentially negative consequences for existing species and ecosystems. While we can study the anatomy and genetics of extinct animals, their behavior, social structures, and ecological interactions are much harder to reconstruct. Introducing a large, potentially aggressive animal like the Aurochs without fully understanding its behavior could be risky. The quest to bring back the Aurochs highlights the interconnectedness of life on Earth. Resurrecting a species is not simply a matter of recreating its DNA, it requires recreating its world. Section 8. A legacy of loss, a future of choices. The story of the Aurochs and the attempts to resurrect it is a microcosm of humanity's complex and often contradictory relationship with the natural world. Driven to extinction by human activity, the Aurochs has become a potent symbol of our capacity for destruction. Yet the desire to bring it back reveals a yearning to undo past mistakes and restore what has been lost. The heck cattle, while not true Aurochs, serve as a tangible reminder of our fascination with these magnificent creatures. They also highlight the limitations of selective breeding and the ethical complexities of manipulating nature. Modern scientific advances, such as ancient DNA sequencing and genetic engineering, offer tantalizing possibilities for resurrecting extinct species. However, these technologies also present us with profound ethical dilemmas. As we grapple with the consequences of our actions, we must carefully consider the implications of wielding such powerful tools. Section 9. Conclusion. The Aurochs and the Anthropocene. The story of the Aurochs is ultimately a story about us. It reflects our capacity for both destruction and creation, our fascination with the natural world, and our struggle to live in harmony with it. In the Anthropocene, the current geological epoch defined by human impact on the planet, we are faced with unprecedented challenges. Climate change, habitat loss and pollution are driving species to extinction at an alarming rate. The quest to resurrect the aurochs, while seemingly focused on a single species, raises broader questions about our role as stewards of the planet. Should we focus our efforts on bringing back the dead, or on protecting the species that are still struggling to survive? Can we truly reverse the damage we have inflicted on the natural world, or are we simply creating new unforeseen problems? As we navigate the complexities of the Anthropocene, we must proceed with caution, guided by both scientific knowledge and ethical responsibility.